I'd like to welcome everybody to this October meeting of the Metropolitan Study Group of the SRIA. My name is Sheen Towers and I am the current Director of Studies for the Metropolitan Study Group. And today we have a presentation by Frater Martin Faulks on the subject of Rosicrucian regeneration, the inner alchemy of the rose and cross. I'm very much looking forward to this, Martin, so it gives me great pleasure to hand over to yourself at the Atlantis bookstore. All yours.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So, if we were to ask people who'd heard the word Rosicrucian, what they knew about the Rosicrucians during the 17th century in the British Isles, they would tell you of various legends. They know they're alchemists. They know they're enlightened Christian brothers. But they would also tell stories, and some stories that appeared in novels and in other tales. Rosicrucians were known to be able to make a form of light that could shine perpetually inside without a source of fuel. This probably came from them reading the Fama Fraternitas, where there is an indoor sun. They were known to have automaton robots that could protect their tombs, but they also had the secret of regeneration. Rosicrucians can go away and they can go through certain special processes to make themselves younger again. And they don't do this for folly or because of fear of death. No, death is just a transition to a true Rosicrucian. They do this because they might have special missions they need to fulfill here, and one lifetime isn't enough. Well, today we're going to hear how they did this from original sources. Now, just to manage people's expectations, if you're interested in history, if you're interested in very specific dates or meetings or where the exact quote comes from, I'm the wrong person for this. What I'm interested in is the mechanism and the practice and how it would be performed. And that's what we're going to be exploring. Now, may I ask, are my slides showing for you? Can everyone see them?
Yes.
Wonderful. So, here's the very important thing to express. I'm not really your speaker this evening. I am but the host. No, for something as important as this, you don't want a modern person. You want original practitioners. Before you, you can see three practitioners from the 1600s who all purported to have direct knowledge from the Rosicrucians. All wonderful, impressive men in their own respect, but very different approaches and very different characters. Let me first introduce you to John Hayden. John Hayden was a bit of an interesting character who specialized in herbalism and in astrology. He was a royalist who made his fortune from both publishing and prescribing treatments. And his fame spread because he managed to predict when Oliver Cromwell died and how exactly. I would be amiss not to mention that some people viewed him as a bit of a rogue. He was in and out of jail. And Elias Ashmole called him a thief and a cheat. And if you look at the beginning of John Hayden's books, they're suspiciously very similar, word for word, to other writers like Francis Bacon and Thomas Vaughan. Uh, he most certainly took from other writers very freely, and this is probably one of the reasons he got such a reputation. The reason we're asking John to come to talk for us this evening is because he had very special knowledge of certain techniques. Now, it's going to be a bit under duress because what he likes to talk about is chemical alchemy and herbalism. He fell in love with, and some people questioned his motives, Culpeper's widow. And we're asking him to talk about a technique which involves rebuilding the vital force in the body. It's one that he knows more than everyone else knows about it, but he doesn't know he knows more than everyone else knows about it. He traveled and he learned this technique. He went to Persia, he went to Egypt, he went to Italy, and he saw people, but it's not really where his interest area is. So we're going to have to really keep him on subject if we're going to extract the essence of how we're going to do this. And we're going to hear mostly in his own exact words about this technique, so you can get the feel and the approach that he would have had. Then the next picture you can see, this is not actually really a picture of Thomas Vaughan. This is a picture that has been attributed to him so much that I can't emotionally let go of it. We thought it was Thomas Vaughan's twin brother, Henry Vaughan, for a while. It's probably John Donne, who was another esoteric writer at the time, but it's become him now. And talking about become him, we will also be hearing from possible words of a pseudo Vaughan. Thomas Vaughan used to publish under the name Eugenus Philalethes. He was a practical alchemist. We're going to get him to talk about inner alchemy, the techniques through meditation whereby you can perform alchemy inside. It's very, very important to express that for Thomas, true alchemy couldn't be done alone. And we would be honored if we could hear a few words from Rebecca. Rebecca Vaughan was more than a muse. Many people call her an idolized muse. No, Rebecca was as much the magician and alchemist, and for the Vaughans, magic and alchemy and mysticism were all the same thing as he was. Indeed, her achievements tend to show her great tenacity. There are circumstances in their life where they're trying something chemical. They're trying to actually extract a certain fluid that evaporates, and they can go through a whole process. Takes months to get there, and they just got a drop of this. But if it comes into contact with air, it evaporates, and Thomas gets really low. He needs this as one of the stages in creating the Philosopher's Stone, and they can't find a way to make more of it. It's labor intensive, it goes wrong often, the water that doesn't wet hands. And he concludes that it's kind of like a curse or a test that's too strong for him. He becomes really, really sad with it. But Rebecca's got a plan. Her plan is do it. And she does. She just does it, extracts those for the whole 2 weeks, and then she gets it down to, a week and a half, a drop, done. Right, next drop, done. She was the fire behind this furnace here. And this relationship between them continued even after she had moved to the next place. You can see in his diary, often she comes to him to give him a bit of help later on. My favorite one is where she manifests to him. And normally in these manifestations, she's telling him a big message about stuff. and there's certain signs of her coming. The buzzing of bees, darkness coming across the area, the sound of nightingales, and she appears, and so you'll hear about some of the forms she appears when we talk to Thomas Vaughan. And she appears to tell him to stop listening to gossip from the neighbours because after she's gone, it's getting at him. They're telling him things about her, and it's actually starting to really make him low. So she has to come through to stop her high alchemical journey and come back and say, "For goodness sake, Thomas, pay attention." So he'll be talking to us about inner alchemy, and then we're going to move to the beautifully high-minded. Thomas Vaughan was Welsh. He was a soldier. He saw so much in the wars that he fought that in the end he became a priest. Unlike the flamboyant and verbose John Hayden, Thomas Vaughan is poetic and almost impossible to interpret. The members of the Golden Dawn often would try to write commentaries, and most of them gave up on him. And the reason they couldn't interpret him, and it's really important if you read this, is, and this is the first time I've ever heard this expressed, it was a realization I had a few days ago, there are two voices. So the reason his works read so confused is because there are two voices, they're writing them together. He'd write a paragraph, she'd do a response. He'd do a response, and that's how, and all his major works are contemplations of opposites together. Then we move to the more clear writing. Robert Flood, beautiful, dedicated Christian with Neoplatonic aspirations, specializing in memory, in prayer, in contemplation. Yes, he's got a chemical laboratory, but we're asking him to, in his own words, tell us a little bit about, through contraction, through meditation, how could that lead to a regeneration in a Rosicrucian manner? So there we have three experts. One revitalizing with the breath and with the energy. The other one joining through inner alchemy, and the third one teaching us about contemplation. So now we're going to start with what all three of them agree on. And this is a very important point because, you know, like rap stars now, they do diss tracks and someone does one back and then they do one back. These writers were doing that about each other. And most of the pamphlets we read are a response to someone, you know, so, and actually it brings out the best, it makes it more exciting. So there's very little we're going to get where they're going to agree in approach, but they are in complete agreement with the problem. Now, you're going to see woodcuts here from lovely alchemical works, most of them contemporary with the authors, but please be aware that I'm using them a bit out of context sometimes in order to illustrate other important points. Here's the other important point, and this is the foundation of everything that continues. From a Rosicrucian point of view, why are you aging? You didn't age in the Garden of Eden. So why are you aging now? What's happened? In the Garden of Eden, you could partake of the tree of life directly, which is in the center. But when we ate of the tree of knowledge, there was a dividing force, there was a division of our mind. Our consciousness started to make judgments. Oh, I like this, or I don't like that. I want this to happen. I'm scared of this happening. And a division in the energies of our body happened. We ended up with a sun and a moon, a male and a female. The polarities divided into the energy of the mind and of the body. Before we left, our mind naturally, the energy of the mind regenerated us against the ravages of time. So now we are born with a minor repair problem, which is exacerbated by outwards desires or fears. Now, why is it exacerbated? Because we're using up that energy on them. So imagine the force of your mind has power to it to make things happen. And it's trying to make everything happen you ask it for all the time. So if you lie in bed and you think, oh, I hope that interview goes well tomorrow, your mind sends some mind force to do that, but it's not using it for repair. So this division, this of the sun and moon, they have special words for it. The radical moisture and the natural heat. Everyone in the SRIA right now is going, the natural heat? We learn about, yes, it's the same thing. And indeed, quotes from some of these authors are in SRIA ceremonies, so they definitely were inspiring from that. So what's the process then? How are you going to do this? Well, the process is Christianity. You're going to rejoin these through. It would naturally happen, but with a slightly different feel. So all this reason for abstinence, you're going to close down the desires of each one of the areas. You're going to cut off wasted energy, and you're going to bring the mind, which is the spirit. At the time that they haven't got a distinction, your consciousness is your divine, for back to the body, and body back to the spirit. When they combine, something really special happens. Something really special happens. This is why a good Christian or reaches a stage where amazing things are possible, because the state of union is empowering. It's more powerful than the sum of its parts. And your consciousness takes on the physicality of the body energy, so what you think happens, and your body energy takes on the immortality of the mind, so that aging would cease. Now, why? Why was this so associated with Rosicrucianism? Well, partly it might have been because, if you remember, Christian Rosencross was perfectly preserved, so that may have triggered this kind of idea. But it's probably the strong association with alchemy and to do with the joining of opposites. Now, how do I know this is what they agree on? All three of them describe this specifically. This is where it is. So we know this is the kind of the what's going to happen. And this is the reason why saints, of course, when they're buried, they remain. That's why you can have a look at the body of a saint. It will be perfectly preserved because they're closer to God. That's what's doing this. Now, there are other Rosicrucian associations here. The cross and the rose are seen as symbols of these opposites which we are seeking to unify. There's no consistency with this. The rose is always feminine and the cross is always masculine. But which one is which? That's a bit of a debate. Sometimes the masculine is the fiery consciousness of the mind. So you must take the cross and bring it to the rose, which is your feminine physical form. And we know it's feminine because you can see the base of humanity is feminine from our bodies. Other times it's the other way around. The body is your cross to bear, and you must bring the rose of divinity in there. What is also hidden in this level is that a fixation with this idea of a rejuvenating dew or moisture, and there's probably a joke in there. This Rossi or Ros this dew. In alchemy, this is a real big part of this, is to be able to get a dew that forms. And the dew in nature, we'll see, is also seen as sacred. And in alchemy, there's a dew in you. All three agree that from this union in you or in a laboratory, there can form this regenerative dew. Now, anyone who knows about yoga, it just thinks, wow, so Rosicrucianism, it's got this yogic philosophy, and we can hear a little bit about that. So now we've got to the point where everybody agrees. It's time to hear some individual opinions, which I will express using active memory in the words, as far as I can, of the individual. Okay. So first, we're going to hear from John Hayden, who's going to tell us when the body starts to run out of this natural heat and we start to see signs of age, how can we refuel that naturally? Has he appeared? We have one more to make the picture there. So here we are. There's John Hayden. Ooh. In his laboratory. What would John Hayden say if he was here in Atlantis Books now? If just for a few moments he could come here. And he knew the situation, he knew what this was, he knew the technology, we didn't have to overcome that. And he knew what he wanted us to tell him. To tell us. And he was on target. What would he say? I think he'd say something like this. He'd say, if medicine is what you seek, medicine is whatever destroys that which would hurt you. And yet, there's a room here and no one has a sword. So we don't have the beginning of medicine here at all. If you want to learn the Rosicrucian secrets of regeneration, you have to be aware that other people have asked you to believe ludicrous things. I mentioned swords. Well, you're going to be hearing from other speakers, Eugenus Philalethes and Robertus Fluctibus. They will ask you to believe that you can grind up a sword and drink that to cure you of a wound. And yet you're going to listen to them. They're going to tell you that you shouldn't make love to a woman, but you should seal all that off. You should not drink wine or experience beauty. But yet, God himself formed you, and he told you to go forth and multiply. When he made the universe, he said, behold, it is beautiful. And yet they're going to tell you to deny beauty. So the only person you can listen to today is me. And it's not because I'm arrogant. It's because I'm not arrogant. I'm not arrogant enough to say I'm Christian and not listen to what's being said. So this is a humble statement. I am the secretary of nature and the servant of God. So here's some lies I want you to drive away from your mind. They will tell you that your thoughts come from here, from the fatty substance in your skull. But I was in Persia and somebody's head was chopped asunder and in there was just liquid. How can just fat move this? There's another force which they deny. They'll tell you that herbs have certain substances in them that can change you. And I tell you that they contain rays from distant stars. They say that stars can't influence us to that strength. But I was once on a galleon where copper pots melted as a comet went over. You hear these names, don't you? Lumen de Lumini, Magica de Adamica. They seem impressive to begin with, but then it's ludicrous when you start reading what they're saying. Is there a cure for these silly names? You heard that I went into prison, but the prison is of their own making. It's of their own arrogance and frills and need for status. But I've been summoned here to talk to you about a rough subject. For those who don't know about alchemy, there is a form, a means, a rough way of restoring the vitality of the body. The secret is known in Egypt. That's how camels can go across the desert. They know how to bring the vitality back in their body. Some Persian soldiers, or they know this as well. Did you know in India, there are some people with no mouths? They don't actually have mouths. And they absorb everything directly. Paracelsus, he lived on one scruple of solar energy for 20 years. That's documented. I myself fasted for 2 days. But then I needed to go back into the laboratory. Have you ever been into a laboratory? There's potions you can make that change that way. Anyway, when you sit and look at sunlight, remember that within those beams glistens a form of lucid fatness and moisture that some Rosicrucians can make their mouth into a stomach using. Indeed, some Rosicrucians, they can survive for weeks just on the smell of wine. Oh. Do you know the mouthless ascetics, they do so just on the smell of flowers. Learning to breathe this form of original moisture, first in the sun, in the company of friends, and then on your own, and then finally in the dark, into every pore, maybe any other place where you can absorb. This is the key. Start very, very gently. And remember, whenever you eat, to make your mouth your stomach. You must remember you are weak naturally. You are fallen. Your body needs to be repaired. Take that attitude whenever you sleep and start to make each pore a stomach. First in the sparkling sunlight, and then finally in the darkness. And it is through this means and through absorbing with like manner when you eat and through the correct herbs, you will start to rebuild the heat. Your grey hairs, they'll disappear. And when you drink wine, soon, as though you don't see wrinkles on others' faces, there will be none on yours either. Eat the things that start life. All rites or living things have an oil in them, and true Rosicrucians know how to extract the correct oil. The oil from snakes and the oil from hearts. This is regenerative when rubbed on the skin or drunk, but not through any special property other than this original moisture which is contained within. Now, I would talk to you about the real Rosicrucian rituals and the genuine practices, but it's time for me to go. Remember, when you hear the other speakers, do not close off your senses. Don't cut away from the world. These need to be cleaned to shine pure, not closed down. For a sun should never be extinguished, but enlivened. So let's talk a little bit about what John Hayden recited to you there. You can have a bit of fun. You can look up those words and find out which books he said them in. The few things he didn't mention, which are very important. John believed that Rosicrucians, true Rosicrucians, had a thing called seraphical illumination. It's a bit of a pity. I thought this would be a priority. The idea is that there are different manners of thinking, and this is the highest angelic thinking. And that all Rosicrucians should practice this from the beginning. You need to be thinking from the highest position possible, and you need to make sure that nothing can lead you astray. For him, this kind of illuminated state, which is when you're looking for the best outcomes for all and for the thing that leads to the highest connection with the divine in all things, this actually had a regenerative effect that made you young already. Other people, they're getting all worked up about things, whether you're stealing their book or anything like that. No, you need to be in a higher place, and only Rosicrucians have this angelic consciousness, and it's something you need to practice and practice every day. If you read him about this is actually, imagine perhaps if I said to you, show your best self in absolutely every single circumstance, whether there's someone there or there's someone not there. Absolutely, you are here you're in a temporary body to express divinity. So whether you're putting something away, you put it absolutely in the right position, you bring order to the universe, or whether you're forgiving the person on the tube that bangs into you've got to have this higher consciousness. But more than that, most people watching this, you've been in that state where you're thinking, you're being moved by your higher self, and you know how to protect it. The picture from Samuel Mund is actually from one of the early Rosicrucian rituals. I just thought it represented a kind of state of angelic consciousness. In case people don't know, there was an idea at the time that consciousness had its level. There was stone consciousness, very slow. Stones don't think much. Plant consciousness, animal consciousness, and animals, there's a scale of them, probably got the beetles at the bottom and the bears at the top. And then you've got human, and then you've got angels. He's saying you've got to think like the top angel. That's your natural thinking pattern. It should be above it. It's the matter getting in the way. It's the other stuff. You've got to don't wake up from the haze. The second thing, which follows on from this, is for long life, you need to have a Rosicrucian temperament. This is one ruled by the element of air. All other elements should be subjugated to it. You should be thinking rationally and making calculated decisions in all moments. This picture, it represents an adept. I thought it was quite nice to have that adept. He's sort of driving out all impurities in the world around him. This Rosicrucian temperament is described quite nicely. It's a state of tranquil intellectualness, whereby you have got a cheery, I think, let me give you the exact phrasing. You must establish a stable sense of happiness which is unwavering. And that's going to make, that's part of your regeneration, is you're going to be happy. And that's quite an interesting thing, because modernly, perhaps we've got some associations with spirituality where you'd meet someone and they'd be very stoic and everything. No, if he's expecting them to be happy and joyous and liking things. Yes. Incidentally, there was a bit of fun there. I played with taking about the Rosicrucian laboratory. I think John Hayden would loved female company. He'd like to show them his laboratory. Right, so this is a lovely picture here. This is an illustration. Oh, so I'm trying to get the text up here. From this is somebody imagining the Comte de Gabalus teaching his student here. Inedia is the Latin for fasting. In the Comte de Gabalus, he does explain that Rosicrucians can live without food. You've heard of breatharianism. This is a common idea in Eastern stuff. It was part of Rosicrucian tradition. Now, the Rosicrucians weren't as excited by fasting and that kind of stuff as they were by the regeneration. So they had all sorts of things, tinctures you'd take, pills you could take. They had these special techniques. You heard about breathing, pore breathing, and breathing in the energy. This was very much part of an ideal that could do this. But it was viewed with a bit of disdain. Puffers, it would take a sort of a certain type of person to be that obsessive to do it. So I think if you could ask John Hayden, he would have said, well, maybe in India, maybe in Scotland, you might find someone who's that obsessed with it. But they were puffers. They were just doing it by quantity. There were you had some recipes with oils there. They were eating flowers, they were eating seeds, they were eating eggs, all the things which are created with life. There's an association we don't have so much now, which is the connection between sunlight and it. I don't think in many modern classes, if you wanted to learn to use chi or prana, so you can't do it in the dark to begin with. So there's an idea that's in the light. I think that's a new thing. So a different thing. You heard about a scruple of solar energy. That's one. That's just I think it's 102 grams. So the idea was that Paracelsus got this energy from the sun and condensed it into 102 grams worth of solar energy and lived on it for 20 years. You have this vision of him glowing around the place, thinking, yeah, lucky he didn't have to. There were Inedia people at the time. There were women that fasted for very long periods and were seen as being spiritual. Yes, so that's that particular technique. Incidentally, I think John Hayden saw it probably in Persia. He actually saw people who are experts. One of the lovely things I've got about him is perhaps because of his rough character in some way. Maybe I shouldn't say rough, but because of his cupidical character, maybe he was willing to learn from people. So he'd actually say, teach me your technique, no matter where you were. Very Christian Rosencross. Right. So our next memory exercise is going to be Eugenus Philalethes. But this requires a little bit of understanding. You're going to hear two voices of Eugenus Philalethes here. One, which was the shocking appearance in the when Long Livers was published. Long Livers 1722. So Thomas Vaughan has meant to have passed away 40 years beforehand. A book suddenly appears, which is a guide to immortality, practice, and long life, and so on, under his pseudonym. And surprisingly, the original section, the rest of it is from Harcourt de Longueville's text with a few sneaky changes. The biggest bit is about Freemasonry. And it's a message for Freemasons. The author says Freemasons, there aren't many real Freemasons. They've lost their way, and he wants to give a message to them. Is this so? The Freemasons at the time, a bit like now, would probably think, wow, crikey, why is it in his name? Is it saying he's still alive and it's worked for him? Or is the author saying you should think about this teaching in the context of Robert Vaughan? So yes, there's different ways to do this. So Thomas Vaughan, I'll give you both voices, and you can decide if they're the same. Now, Thomas Vaughan, we have I mentioned to you about Rebecca. And that's one of the reasons we might want to wonder a little bit about what we're about to hear, because he very much talks about secrets that only Freemasons know. And surely, if he's working with Rebecca, I put a lovely picture on the right there. Yeah. This is not Rebecca, but you know, this is a feminine figure, which has got the same energetics we're going to hear about going on. Surely she'd know everything. So she's obviously an exception. There are some other slight hints, but whoever wrote Long Livers had read Thomas Vaughan in depth. Many of the images you're about to hear are actually from his writings. And what modern reader doesn't know is the second image that he's going to talk to the Freemasons about actually is from an image where he finds the secret of the internal elixir of life, having followed the instructions from a letter written to him from the Rosicrucians. The readers at the time would know that. And also the readers at the time would have other associations that we perhaps don't have so much with Freemasonry. We can talk about those a little bit later. So let's hear from Thomas Vaughan. Freemasons, pay attention, because this message is for you. Listen carefully, true Freemasons. True Freemasons, you must know that you are part of a royal priesthood. Heaven is not something for the next place, for you must plant the seeds of happiness here and now. Ignore the fat, bloated toad who sits and eats. Let the bird of prey glide high on its own, and the hart prance through the forest. Don't get pulled into the forest, but listen to the true secrets which I will tell you, which will lead you to the exact essence which you seek to extract, which is there. I almost blurted it out for everyone to hear. I will speak to you in riddles that only a true Freemason can decode. Imagine before you a cube tank of the most beautiful limpid water, so clear and dazzling, water that a philosopher could spend his life in contemplation of. Imagine that below these streams of blessed liquid, there are 7 other cubes in which the water flows, each one held up by the figure of a lion at its corner. And then at the bottom, there is a porphyry bowl, which through the mouth of one of the lions flows the water, which becomes the colour of pure emerald. And standing at the top, in the original cube, there is the Queen of the Moon, her face ruddy and her countenance beautiful. Upon her there is silver jewelry, and she has a headdress of a crescent. But to her right is her husband, the King of the Sun. His countenance is white as they reflect each other, and he is donned with rubies and things of gold and the most beautiful vestments. His hair is that of an old raven in colour, whereas hers are like the beams that she reflects. They are within the bath, and the water takes on their blessings as it flows. Oh, beautiful marriage! Oh, holy union! And now, my brothers, I give you a second image that contains the secrets of true Freemasonry. Imagine before you a pellucid Delphinius pyramid made of the finest salt, but purple in its colour, glowing with a fire within it, a fire so hot that you can feel it upon its approach. Within this fire holds the key that only a Freemason could truly grasp. So Freemasons at the time, they wouldn't have found the alchemical connection as surprising as we might now. You see, square and compasses had been used as alchemical symbols from the 1400s onwards. The square representing the masculine force formed by a square, and the compasses form a circle. Some people would believe that this is related to the rose and the cross. The compasses make a circle, a rose, a square would make the cross. They were used to layers of alchemical symbolism, and when they saw this within a Masonic context, they would have immediately known that the whole path was about the joining of the opposites. The 2 pillars outside King Solomon's temple, the celestial, the terrestrial, the sun, the moon, the yin, the yang, the male, the female. So for them to see alchemical symbolism, and those 2 emblems I described, they are from real alchemical works with a context. So they could have looked them up and seen what they were saying. This wouldn't have surprised them. It's probable that whoever wrote the long livers believed that what a Freemason should be doing in their lodge was as follows. It's probable that they expected the Freemason, I don't know what degrees they had at the time, and people are still doing that, but they expected them to first master the left-hand pillar, which was associated with the body and that original and that bodily heat I talked to you about. They would become the masters of restraint, of self-control, of not doing things. They would know to manage their time. They'd be able to keep down all vain and unbecoming thoughts. They'd be able to chisel away anything which was outside their control. After years of this, adjustment in daily life and memorizing the ritual, probably through a question and answer format, they probably believed that within the ritual, you could become at one with that polarity. So the whole idea was you become at one with this kind of feminine, restraint, lunar body kind of area. You'd be able to do this. And then after many, you've got that down, you do the opposite. You master the opposite, the masculine pillar, your mind, outgoing, active things, charitable things, learning, elevation of the mind, doing stuff. And probably in your ritual and in your practice, you become at one with the other pillar. Then, in a dynamic process, you would join them together, like make an arch between them or do them one in some way. And I think it's probable, because there are many memory systems that have kind of this format at the time, that the difference is how much you believe it could do. Because I think everyone here would agree, if you mastered that left-hand pillar, never ate too much, always rested enough, did, exercised every day and did everything in balance, and the right-hand pillar had enough social life, kept stimulated, kept learning, you'd live a longer life. In fact, that sounds like a modern health regime. Do your Sudoku, do your exercise, keep learn another language. What then joining together, it seems that at the time, some Freemasons thought that something special could happen when they were joined together. And that's the important lesson there. Now, there is another factor here, and which is perhaps worth mentioning. In Masonic texts, there's often mentions of dew. Have a look, and you see they've all the prayers, a dew of thy blessing, and give us a dew, and it's gone there. Everyone we're hearing from today had an interest in actual dew. And this cholium, some people say tere, this colium tere, this is a combination of the heaven and earth. Here's the secret. We only know the actual secret because someone confessed this on their deathbed. And if you go back and you see the other processes, what they used to do is they'd gather dew in the morning. And some people this is actual physical dew. And they'd gather this either with special brushes or special devices. What we've got depicted here is one of the devices you see recommended in Vaughan's works. And what you do is you get to these sticks and you put some glass at the top, and the dew gathers there and it dribbles down into a container. Now, during certain times, certain months, the dew will have a different quality, and the dew is meant to be in and of itself regenerating, because it is the union of the sky and the earth. Okay. And you can extract certain powders, and again, in certain months or certain timing, the powder that comes from it should be pink. Now, typical me, I went to someone who studies rainfall and said to him, "What would that be?" And he gave me the chemical answer. I said, "No, in dew." And he said, "I don't know really. In dew. It's different. Yeah, not rain, actually in dew." I don't think anyone's done any studies into how do you get into dew. What's it on? It's on everything. It's on everything. I don't know. And then some people have alchemical processes you take it through. Some people say you take it directly. You'll see why I'm mentioning this. This whole formula, but they certainly were doing this practically. It certainly was seen as a Rosicrucian secret at the time. even to the degree where I think in Italy they have these stories. I'm looking at the Italians for reassurance here, that if you go out and you put dew on your face, you'll look younger. Maybe that's only in one village up in the, yeah. But there's some stories about this regeneration here. But what if we're not talking externally? That's the important thing here. What if the idea that a combination of heaven and earth could lead to a rejuvenating dew was internally? If you read Vaughan's original works, that's absolutely clear. Now we've got to be thankful for some people's indiscretion. Sorry, so this is the Iamblic. This is actually an alchemical container. That's Paracelsus. Yes, so let me get back on track. In Vaughan's writings, now and again, he or Rebecca do actually slip up and tell you it's internal. They do actually say that. And a lot of their stuff is analogy for inside. Yeah, but here's the really, really big important thing. For them, it's both. If Rebecca could come here right now and we were saying, well, we want to do this. She said, well, how are you going to do it without a laboratory? He said, no, we're just going to do the internal alchemy thing with no laboratory. I said, well, no. You need to look at the process in the test tube in front of you until you can feel what's going on there and then find what's going on in here from that. There's no use someone saying, oh, the sparkles in the sunlight. How are you going to feel them if you can't night after night have it in front of you? So the idea of it doing it separately probably didn't occur to them. The writer of Long Livers thinks you might be able to do it with physical practices. He thinks maybe you could do fasting and gymnastics and stuff and find stuff for it. I don't know, that you need to have a comparison. Now, how do we know this? Because John Hayden tells us. He actually says, yeah, you got to match your spirit to what's in the chemical, like the Vaughans say. Yeah. So he's got that. We also have a counter argument where Robert Flood, there's a book called The Tillage of Light, and he wrote one back called Truth's Harrow. And Tillage of Light was saying alchemy is just the gaining of wisdom, and it's an inner process of your enlightenment and your spirituality. And he says, no, like absolutely not. That's a ludicrous assertion. So you're telling me you believe you can turn water into you can drink wine and it can turn into the blood of Christ, and then you're saying it's silly that there's a philosopher's stone? What's wrong with you? Absolutely. Don't you know? Even have you read Hermes as above so below? Ludicrous statement. You might hear more about that later. Okay, so let's go on to some internal alchemy. Here we get the second voice of the Vaughans. It was early in the morning. I'd lost so much and worked so hard. And the dawn was just breaking. And I fell asleep. So the day was strangled before it even started. And everything took on a very dark tincture. And it was just me alone in darkness. And I searched so hard for anything that I decided there was nothing there. So I sat hoping maybe something would find me. And then in pure darkness, There was a breeze, and I heard leaves. Was I in some kind of wood or a forest? And a spark of light appeared, illuminating where I was, moving, both pink and white in its colour, with an increasingly purple hue. As the light grew, I realised I was within the woods, but the woods had formed a building, which I conceived to be the temple of nature. I was so encouraged by this light as it formed up into a bright and shining star before me. I stood and I could see the nightingales and the birds call out and the bees humming, which occurred to me to be strange in the environment that I'm in. Before me, there was a checkerboard pattern upon the floor, and dew in tiny droplets glistened as I walked forwards, and I found myself greatly encouraged by such beautiful small things. And there she was, the finest beauty you would ever see. She stood, not too tall or too short. Her clothing, a shade of green I'd never seen before, so green that it touched my heart. Upon her clothing were decorations of flowers and ribbons of white and silver. Upon her head, a tiffany that she held with her hand. Her locks falling to her breast, but held in a peculiar glove behind, which was decorated with colours of purple and those of the sky. I could smell the east and that of the most fragrant, beautiful flowers. Upon her body, she had jewelry made of jade and of carbuncles that glowed in the light, for no metal would she ever wear. I knew in that moment that she was the spirit of nature, and she was here to teach me. But as I walked forwards, with a gesture, she stopped me, and in silence, I listened. Because, Eugenus, you have been studying me so long, all my secrets will be revealed to you, for I am Talia, for I am known by many different names. You follow me, and I will take you to the secret magical mountain of the Rosicrucians. So distant, no one ever finds it, and so near, no one knows it's here. As we walked in silence, I wondered if I should speak. And my maiden, she was led by the light that walked before her, as if a lantern or torch was shone. But then she takes him past the, I quote, more ravenous birds of the sky or beasts of the field is next. And she leads him to the invisible mountain of the Rosicrucians. You can see this lovely picture in front of you. You can't not by a you need to go as a child, so you can't get in unless you're like a little child. You can see the philosopher at the bottom. This is the Rosicrucian who has reached the mountain, and he's got jewels beyond measure. He's got a rosary in his hand, and is the Ouroboros. The Ouroboros appears actually in long livers, but there is a difference in the meaning actually. The Ouroboros here is a very positive figure, whereas in long livers it seems to be a bit of a challenge. You can see the blindfolded man here. You can see the angel, maybe with a cable tow or a rope here. Vaughan was friends with Sir Robert Maury. He was friends with other Freemasons. He may have been a Mason. He may have known some of the symbols here. So this is most certainly a practice of inner alchemy. There's no doubt about it. If you read it and you start to read his other works, he's got a lovely one about the Euphrates River, which is a contemplation between the fire and water in a central channel. It's for a whole book. He's got another one which is about his Colium Terrae, which is a contemplation between the oneness between the sky and the earth. Of course, we've got the letter he got from the Rosicrucians, which tells him to do this, to seek the inner mountain. Right, the mountain is also what they call the white stuff that comes from the dew in the previous process. In this story, we could continue on. We could have heard the rest, but some people might want to do other things today. He does eventually, he finds the dew, and then he's led to a purple pyramid with a fire in it, like we heard in long livers. There are some important differences. There's a guard hedgehog. It's looking at responses. Yeah, it's a sign it's warning you that this process is a very careful one, and if you're just like a hedgehog, if you're too rough, you get prickled. And there's a snake, a kind of like a kundalini snake in the base of the mountain. Incidentally, he does call it the Indian mountain at one point. So it's probably a process. Now, here's the tough thing. At the end, Talia, which is Rebecca's spiritual name, says to him, I'm going to tell you the rest. But you've got to promise you will never tell anyone if I reveal this to you. And he says, yes. If you read all of Vaughan's works obsessively, which someone might have at some point, you'll get it. You'll get that stuff. It is an internal exercise, and it's also, you could probably see it in the Royal Arts. You could see it in Indian yoga, and you're probably aware of some of the symbolism associated with this, which I'll go into now. So you've seen this Ouroboros. Well, how would you join opposites? Well, you need to make them one. You can see Cleopatra, the alchemist's picture here. Oh, I think we're missing a bit of text. In the Emerald Tablet, we have a hint at this. Now, I want to be absolutely clear. I'm not saying this is the literal original meaning of the quote from the Emerald Tablet, but it's funny how these texts become live. You heard about the waterfall and the fountain. Well, in many Rosicrucian texts, we've started to get this. So with early alchemical writings, it's very hard to work out whether people are trying to make gold to be enlightened and pure, or be pure in order to make gold. Yeah, which one's which. There's a big motivation to be able to chemically make gold. By the time we get this Rosicrucian influence, it becomes far more spiritualized, and some of this spiritualization is clear here in some of these depictions. So you could see this fountain here of salt, sulfur, and mercury joining together. This is the Rosicrucian, the Rosary of the Philosophers. You can see that symbolism of the king and the queen in the bath. I'm sure practitioners of Indian yoga will be thinking about the Ida in Pingala. I'm sure Kabbalists will be thinking about the pillar of mercy and severity. you can see them joining together. This is a very beautiful and important diagram if you want to sort of contemplate the exercise. We have three streams coming from the same fountain. We have the Virgin's milk. I think that's an interesting one to contemplate. The spring of vinegar and the water of life. The water of life is a central neutral force in which the Virgin's milk, which is a lunar feminine force, and the masculine spring of vinegar can join together. And as you can see, there's lion's feet at the bottom of this. This is very related to Vaughan's inner alchemy. But here's the take home. They believed at the time there was a process that meditatively you could take part in, which involved the direct joining of the lunar and solar forces, the bodily and the spiritual forces as one. And the Vaughans definitely knew about it. And I sometimes wonder if there's an Indian influence because it's so similar. But then it's a funny thing in life, isn't it? People do this thing where they see something which is objectively true and they think it's communication. So, oh, do you fry onions in your country? So do we. Wow, there must be a link. Martial arts, they said, we have that punch. We've got the same body trying to do the same thing. If these objective internal forces, they're going to reoccur. Okay. But that's all out of respect for Talia. I'm willing to say, otherwise, our connection will be cut off
Again.
Okay, so now it's time to go to our sort of our final speaker, and to achieve a sort of a beautiful higher state. Robert Flood, if you've ever read his writings, his spirit has the most amazing sense of purity and kindness and directness. And though, just like everyone else we've met, he had proper fights in writing with people, some of them defending us Rosicrucians, his approach has got a slightly different feel. I once made a quintessence of bread. You might wonder, why bread? But doesn't Holy Scripture tell us that wheat is a symbol we must all understand? I was young at the time, and after that quintessence was made, it fell upon my hand, which still remains younger than the rest of me. I've never been able to reproduce it. Yes, there are two fires. You can see in my diagram here, there are two fires within the body. But all this is distraction. Distraction from the highest. Your thoughts, they don't come from anywhere here. There is a constant stream, a pure force from above, which you should be aspiring towards. Many people write about these achievements frustrated. They can't woo the lady. They can't bring her to talk, so they declare her a harlot. The seed will not grow for them, so they say it is dead. But what is the difference between an environment when a seed might grow and when it will not. It is the depth of the harrow. Do not farmers continually dig the soil and plant, putting one plant in one area and one in another, and turning and gathering with timing and persistence? Others, they seek some change which will be there forever. But no, you are the farmer. Regeneration is what you are, not what you do. There are those that doubt there is a material elixir or a stone. Did not Ezekiel prophesy upon dry bones? The dry bones lay before him, and in a dream God saith to him, prophesy, Ezekiel, to the dry bones. And he prophesied to the dry bones, and sinews appeared upon those dry bones, and then skin appeared upon those dry bones, and then breath appeared within those dry bones, and Israel was restored. Did not Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead? It's not what we're seeking, just the truth of Christianity. If you reach forth with your mind to the higher, there is a oneness, and holy people you can see upon their countenance glow with that divine original force. Do we not read in the writings of the Jesuits about exercises which are physical? Did Jesus not say that there will be greater miracles than he has performed? Well, you are that greater miracle, and this doubt is not from the right place, but from another. Will you be regenerated? Not if you seek it, because regeneration is a goal into itself. And I'm telling you, you need to seek the reaching of your mind upwards. All things look to something and reflect them. Here we have those who toil, and they look to those who rule above them, and those look to those who have been appointed by God to rule over us. In heaven, the same is true. An angel praises that above, and all things here are formed from that praise, for it shines down as well as upwards. So this is the ladder that Jacob saw. Did Jacob not see angels come downwards and up the ladder? Yes, all things here are being formed from the prayers of above. And you must return to Eden. You can seek a small spark of Eden in your heart, like the happiness you heard about, or through some form of internal dreams. But the true goal is to return to heaven and bring heaven here at the same time. And you are born to do this. So praise God in every action. For Jesus said, the beginning is the greatest commandment. Praise the Lord my God with all your heart, and love your neighbor as yourself. The mysteries you seek, they're all in this holy book. Now, a speaker earlier told you to be wanton, to drink, but he forgets that God speaks only in the finest detail. He said, go forth and multiply must be the goal, not anything else. Yes, our God turned water into wine, but this was for the nourishment at a celebration, not for the confusion of the mind. Through prayer, through memory, and only through grace, not by your own works, may you find the higher. And when you find the higher, it may be that if you are destined for a regeneration here, whether it be through the laboratory or through one of these other means, only then, if your purpose requires it, will this come to be. The truth is, this is but a robe or garment you are wearing. And just as you change your clothes, you should be happy to change this. Why seek immortality when you already have it? This is the true understanding. And although those greatest brothers, the Rosicrucians, who I dream of joining, they have these secrets, they use them sparingly and in a Paracelcian manner when one of their brothers has affairs or duties they need to fulfill. So, you heard from Robert Flood there. Robertus Fluctus, he was a lovely man, beautiful thoughts of things, and as a far more traditionalist, I mean, there we are. Rebecca and Thomas, they were very, very serious Christians. I mean, when they died, we get a little collection, not of Thomas Vaughan. Rebecca, you get her collection of what she's been reading, and she loves devotional texts and chemical works. A bit of fun. She sought out other women that had laboratories, so she'd actually go to see them. So, but I think they were more chemistry than her. But anyway, back to Robert Flood. His memory techniques, they're all about blessing people, all about kindness, all about beauty. He saw the Rosicrucian message as a joyous celebration and restoration of original Christianity, whereby all of us would be able to stop vain distractions and fulfill our duties here on earth. He saw the situation you were born in as being a seed being planted, and you should flourish where you are, and that it was an arrogant thing to try to fight things, and that if you were to be released from the situation, it would be from doing it. You'd actually be able to win. I don't know why the text, there we are, the text, I don't know why I want you to see the words inner alchemy by prayer. Right, so Robert Flood had this idea of contraction. He was very influenced by Neoplatonic thought, and there was a commentary that Marsilio Ficino had produced, which was on Plotinus, which said that if you contemplated a higher thing, there was a contraction where your mind would become part of it. So if you sat and you thought about love and you became at one with that love, there would be a contraction and you could get closer to the actual original idea of love. But for him, meditation was heart-based. It wasn't in your head. This is a diagram. These are two people trying to meditate on something divine and beautiful. Let's say it's truth. One person's heart is clouded and full of distraction and doubt and maybe even some mixed motives. The others was completely open and they become at one with it. So Rosicrucian meditation for him is opening your heart to something fully. And that was really approach. If you read his works obsessively, then you might find that he thinks the cure is always find the blessing that will solve this for you and open your heart to it until it does. And that's your devotional step. It might be forgiveness, it might be love, it might be ambition, but that's how you're going to do things. And read the New Testament every chance you get, and really, really do it. Important thing, what's that like? What's he expecting? Well, it's hard for me to quite grasp where he is with it, but um, most people here probably be aware of the vision of Hermes. The vision of Hermes is an experience at the beginning of the Corpus Hermeticum. I'll give you an abbreviated version, but you might notice some connections with an earlier one we mentioned. Once, when thinking about the things that are, a great tiredness came across me. Not the kind of tiredness you get from working too hard or eating too much. A very different tiredness. And my body became heavy. And my mind soared to a great height. And then in that dazzling brilliance, I could see the mind of God that said, "Listen unto me, Hermes. I am Pymander." This vision of Hermes, where the protagonist in the Hermetica, he rises to a great height and he gets to talk, gets to see the mind of God and become at one with it. Flood felt that very much that the Rosicrucians kind of had this down, and he saw the even the symbolism of the vault connect to this. But it's got sometimes the feel of an out of the body experience, or sometimes the feel of a oneness. And Flood does state that he thinks that first of all, he's sure you can physically make a tincture that makes you younger. That is absolutely true. Anyone who disputes that is just not interested in the subject or is stupid. There's one of those two choices, right? And he writes that explicitly. He has these furrows of golden furrows of truth, harrows of truth, he calls them actually, which is like you're going to till the soil. But he's equally sure that everything is due to God's grace and that this oneness is the answer and you can be regenerated. He actually compares it. There's the scenes in the Bible. Moses, he melts down they've made a effigy of a calf and he makes it into some kind of gold you can drink. That's the portable gold remedy. But also there's a scene when Moses sees God and he comes back and his face is different. I don't know why, but for Flood, his face is different and young. Doesn't say that in the Bible or anything. To him, he's been regenerated by it. And that's how the Rosicrucians regenerate for Flood. So you've heard from three far superior Rosicrucians than myself, all three who have the humility to say they're not Rosicrucians. Maybe there's some truth in that. May everyone watching this find something beautiful in this. And before I go, I'd like to just add a few honorable mentions that I didn't want to ask our speakers to cover. Spiritual quarantine. Rosicrucians have a discipline very similar to the Kaya Kalpa of the Indians, whereby you will go into a kind of hibernation or a spiritual retreat which will make you younger. This exists in the works of Count Cagliostro. This exists in the Gold and Rose Cross, the of Germans. It's in long livers periods when you spend time in herbal baths, in darkness. What's going to happen in some of these? It varies. Some of them involve taking a certain tincture, which I'm putting this in modern phrasing. Very sorry, I can't quite think of how to put it otherwise. It breaks your cells up. All your hair falls out, the programming doesn't work anymore, your teeth fall out, you're very ill, and you have to stay either in the room or in the bath and be looked after. You have to have special food which is safe for you to have. You'll be like that for a while, and then they'll give you another one that reforms everything. Your teeth will go back your hair will grow back, you will be young again. There's lots. John Dee had a formula for this. It's probably a form of metal that's put in a certain liquid. You can die in this. It's a risky thing. And some people I've met believe they've found people who've done this and, changed their name from Bacon to Hog and gone to America or whatever. There are other ones which are to do with blessings. And in India, for example, you probably where they, if you've heard of this Kaya Kalpa, they drink milk and they take certain herbs. Other ones are herbal. Cagliostro's one is a bit strange. They play bowls, they stay in the dark, they only have soup, but he gives them a special pill. What that pill is, I don't know, but it does seem to have that disruptive element. So the reason they're not doing much is it's quite a serious thing they're about to go through. Some accounts say they go through some of the stuff I'm talking about. The 40-day quarantine and a second 40-day quarantine exists in the Golden Rose Cross. I actually bought a book. I was trying not to read it last night. You have to talk tomorrow. Yes, and you should be preparing for that.
Room for another body.
We have a surprise celebrity appearance here, all the way from Canada, has just appeared. I didn't know he was going to be here. How wonderful. Right. Anyway, so I haven't managed to establish a good record of what they do, because some of the people who record the teachings of that order, they remove esoteric elements, which are the elements we all need to know. So if you're saying, yeah, we spend this time in a hut together for 40 days, that's not really useful for us. But there's definitely this idea of quarantine, and it's related to Christian Rosencross. And some stories say that the Rosicrucians are hibernating. They're not dead. They're in graves around the place. We could wake them up. Be great, because sometimes it's hard to get people to come to meetings. So we can just find where these dedicated guys are. We can finally do that. Paracelsian medicine, as you know, Rosicrucians, like everyone here, partake of the definitions of Paracelsus without fault every single day. I'm certainly doing it. I'm sure you are. Paracelsian medicine believed that everything's going to its own purpose. A bit Aristotelian, I've never thought of it before. The seed is going to become the tree. Everything's going there. Paracelsus thought that the idea, the human flourishing state, was going to be beyond age. So, and though John Hayden hates the Paracelsians, he's very Paracelsian in philosophy, and Robert Flood, he was a Paracelsian doctor. He got rejected from being a medical doctor 4 times because he wouldn't be Galilean with them and wouldn't, they kept giving them Paracelsian answers. And then chemical alchemy. Every single person we have talked to today has a sense that the real method, if you want to do it properly, has to be chemical. So everything we've talked about is a kind of it's doable that way, but you can't do it through plants, you can't do it through breath, you can't really do it through stuff properly unless you're a very special person. For most people, you need the pill, it'll knock you out, you'll go to sleep, you'll wake up, young. You need the philosopher's stone, and they've all got their formulas. You actually can read their formulas if you're one of those alchemy kind of guys. I think we've got some alchemy kind of guys here. It's way beyond my educational level. But here's the important thing. We've had an honorable mention of the techniques. From a Rosicrucian point of view, what's the important thing that we need to have here? We talked about the Rosicrucian temperament. We talked about seraphical and enlightenment. We've talked about the different states of mind. I think the real Rosicrucian secret that runs through all these techniques is one of balance, of making sure that the rose, the feminine creative aspect, joins with the masculine logical aspect. And you can see this is kind of joining in the heart. And I think if we're doing that, no matter what technique you find interesting, whether it be through ritual or be through rites or medicine or meditation, then we're practicing Rosicrucianism in the views of the three we've met today.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Martin. That was a wonderful and fascinating presentation. And yeah, congratulations. You put an awful lot of work into that. That's very clear. And firstly, I'd like to put a question to you that was put to us in the chat by a gentleman called Jim, who is in Texas. And the question is, you mentioned the category spiritual quarantine. Could that be compared to the Christian period of Lent? In other words, sacrificing, abstaining, penance, and atonement for sins. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So first, we've got to be real clear. There were the Rosicrucians we were talking about were extremely dedicated to Christ's teachings. They were reading them all the time, and even in their lives, they saw parallels with them. And all of these exercises, everything was seen as a holy thing. And yes, the 40 days in the desert, Lent, they'd had all this kind of this comparison. Indeed, if you can find a biblical analogy for something, that's definitely acceptable. I've never seen, and sometimes it's quite stretched, actually, so that to the point where I look at it and I think, I don't think that whole section really was about wheat and about how you could extract it from it chemically. I think that was an analogy. So, for example, there's a bit that in the Bible, the New Testament, that says a seed has to die for the plant to grow, and this happens to be talking about wheat, and that's leads to a wheat obsession, where I think it probably could have been an apple pip. Yes.
Okay, just 1 second, please. I was just replying to somebody in the chat here. So Ishmael, if you can hear this rather than me sending the message, yes, you will be able to see the recording of this later. The recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So Thomas Hutchinson, you have your hand raised. Over to you, please.
Thanks, Martin, for that. It was very informative and beautifully poetic, really well spoken. My question was just about the dew, and if that can be likened to the anointing oil or the chrism, and if so, are they both different words for the same alchemical stage or different substances in the process?
Okay. John Hayden, yes, certainly that's exactly the same. The anointing oil is correct. Thomas Vaughan, no, the anointing oil is definitely not the dew in any shape or form. The anointing oil is about sanctification and preparation for things in advance of grace. Don't listen to anyone else. Robert Flood, the anointing oil it actually symbolizes a state of grace, and it is separate to the dew.
Thank you very much. My understanding was that one is an inward breath and one is an outward breath.
Ah, yeah, I like that.
Thank you very much.
That's beautiful, yes. So now we've got our one. Thomas Hutchinson, the dew and the anointment are the same, but different, because one's inwards and one outwards. I like it. Yeah.
Hasu, over to you, please.
Thank you. All I can say, Martin, is there's only one person who can pull something like this off, and that's you. Yeah, you're so taken us from one dimension to a completely new dimension in terms of thinking. When I was listening, something occurred to me. We went back to these famous people who, 1,000 years ago. I wonder what their reaction would be if they came forward 1,000 years and see where we are now, how we interpret things, and what we see in nature and science, and how we are sort of so much tied to a chemical world in real terms. Everything now is processed, produced by a chemical method. Even elements have now gone away from their original 94 table. That we recreated many new elements reaching, I think it's up to about 118. How do you think they would react? And the other thing, I love that phrase which was used, one look for immortal when you already have it. I mean, what a beautiful way of describing our existence as such. That we're always looking for something we already have within us, but then we
Yes.
look outwards.
Well, Hasu, it's lovely to see you here. I just want to mention that we're living the dream right now. Thomas Vaughan used to think, wow, those Indians that make great, not Thomas Vaughan, and John Hayden, too many characters. But John Hayden used to think, wouldn't it be lovely to actually meet an Indian? They'd make wonderful Rosicrucians. I think I've shared this in the group chat. They've got this lovely bronze skin, and it allows them to absorb the sun's rays more, and they're naturally more enlightened than we are. Yeah, and he can do that, and he does. And I think,
Martin,
that we're living the dream now. Yeah. So
Martin, can I interrupt? I can only say that brown skin, the darker the color absorbs more, the lighter
Yes.
the color
Yes.
reflects more. Very simple science.
I know, but you're one of the ones that have a mouth, I see. Yeah. Right, I can answer some of this. So we're going to talk to from Talia. She says to him later on that vision. She says, those who have tried to study me, she's talking as nature, they've raped my secrets. They've tried to make me into their concubine with their silly ceremonies and chants. They make their mouths into an oval, square, and triangle shapes, trying to call forth my energies. They steal my treasures, but don't respect my ways. They overcomplicate things when the secrets are very simple. And I think that it's quite true that at least the Vaughans would look at what we're doing and think, what is wrong with you? Why are you, like with, processing everything and preserving it so many way? They say you should be eating everything that's associated with life. If you're making something stable, preservative, you're making it associated with death. Are you insane? And secrets, nature's got it. You can just eat the apple. Just put an apple tree in your garden, eat the apple, it's fine. Yes. Actually, it's probably got some biblical connotations going on there, but you get my point. So I think the idea of the secrets of nature are simple, and I think probably the secrets of life are quite simple. I think they'd love the technology. They'd love the technology, but I think they'd expect us to be living a lot more healthily, a lot more holy. They'd be confused by the lack of overt Christian things. So I think all three would be offended, absolutely offended that we didn't open this meeting with prayer.
Yes,
I might have missed that.
That's what I was thinking.
Be dumbfounded by that.
I think one of the most, well, in my personal perspective, being member of SRI, is that if those who wrote these beautiful words and concepts and ideas had an opportunity to travel and understand other faiths in a deeper sense, I think they would have seen Rosicrucianism in everyone, because it is a spiritual journey, it's a spiritual belief, and it's not the image that you put and look at to believe in something. It's what you look within yourself and believe that good exists outside.
Yeah, so I think again there's varying opinions, but the idea of it being genuine. So there's an interesting thing. So turn the other cheek, treat your, your neighbor as you would yourself. These kind of things. They're so easy to say, and I think all three characters would see Rosicrucianism as, to some degree, a restoration of a genuine approach to Christianity. But likewise, at least one of them would see Christianity as a restoration of the original religion that existed before these human made up things. That Jesus actually came along and said, right, guys,
Yeah.
no, stop all the rules, stop all these games, come on, be kind, go back to the original. So I think there's that kind of side to it. But again, no one there wouldn't learn from foreign sources or from other traditions.
Thank you, Martin. Long conversation, but maybe next time when we catch up. Bless you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm going to do something that's surprising here. It's a bit of a surprise. I'm going to misuse my time here to ask everyone here a question. It was something that perplexed me last night, and I'd like to put it to you. So there's some lovely books coming out about people, and they're talking about some of the characters we're talking about. So Rebecca, she actually makes some of the biggest discoveries in alchemy, some of the Aqua Rebecca and some of these things now. She appears in visions and shows the way to the higher place. She passes away and then comes back in visions and advises him and so on. But yet, modernly, she's seen as his assistant. That's quite interesting, isn't it? So what I want to ask is, what would she have had to do for us modernly to see her on equal footing? I thought that's quite an interesting point. Because out of all the people we're talking about, well, we know she did it. She came back to tell him off for listening to the neighbours and to tell him when he was going to die and to correct there's some notes in his diary. We've got the diaries of Thomas and Rebecca. And when she dies, she knows she's going to die. She has a dream of a horse chasing her. She knows it's coming. And she's probably worked herself to that point as well. She's so fiery. Yeah. We all know some fiery, energetic women that might overwork themselves near here right now. But I think that's part of it. He reverses, he takes the notebook and he starts to write on the other side. But then he still notes when she comes to help him. I think that's wonderful. And I also think you heard about the bees and the singing of the birds. That's how she always appears in this purple mist, and there's always bees beforehand and everything. She doesn't change that format after she passes away. So I like that she does a full manifestation to tell him off for listening to the gossip of neighbours. I think that's a wonderful thing. But anyway, there's a contemplation for you. What would she have needed to have done to be seen on equal footing to her husband? It's an intriguing thing about our own modern consciousness as how we assess things. Right, any questions from anyone else?
I was just going to say there's a wonderful lady there called Kitty who may be able to answer that question from that side.
You don't want to hear what Kitty's answer was?
I would love to listen to her.
Okay, Kitty, do you want to tell them what your answer was? Yeah. Kitty's answer was she'd have to have been male.
Yeah, but can I ask you to just go a little bit into the question? She already was equal to him. What do you mean in terms of being seen as
yes,
equal
as in being perceived? Yes.
Does she need to be perceived?
Thomas gets remembered. Thomas gets given credit for what she does for her notes, and she's seen as assisting him.
Yeah.
And yet, if their genders were reversed, I
Then
put
she
it to
would
you
be.
that we would see him as the assistant.
Yeah.
And he actually writes, he says, this was discovered by my good lady wife when she was here. This was discovered by her. She does, again, I think there are a couple of practical alchemists in here. she's got this kind of tenacity that most people don't have with stuff. If you've ever met someone who, I was once in Japan, and I was learning a ritual, Yamabushi thing, and there's a young lad performing a ritual, and it involves at one point moving an object over his his head. He performed it so much he wore his hair away. Not many people can do that kind of repetition. She was like that. She was such a, the laboratory should do it. If it was possible, she was going to make that happen. And he was wonderful. Ironically, he actually writes about how to use a wife, right? And he writes the opposite to his relationship, where he says women are really, I mean, it's lovely. It's lovely advice for men, for practitioners here. He's saying, don't hassle them into doing things. Let them listen, and they will come up with the answers you don't know you need. Yeah.
But Martin, as I say, behind a successful man, there's always a strong woman.
There's women in the laboratory. Yeah, absolutely. But Shiraz's answer is, it doesn't matter.
She knew she knew her worth. She didn't need anyone to see it. She didn't need verification from the outside world, perhaps.
Hear, hear. We have a question for you in the chat, Martin. And the question is, which tests or sources must a longevity claim pass before you take it seriously? And which red flags disqualify it?
Yes, so that I love that question. And now you're asking my own personal opinion.
I guess so.
Yes. Yes. So for me, I think it's not just with longevity. So if someone tells you they've got special knowledge, it should be clearly demonstrable. So if they say, right, I know how to govern the mind better than most people, watch carefully. Is there better governance? Are they more disciplined and more calm? Are they able to do things? If someone says to you, are they, I know there's a lot of people on the internet, don't they? Say, pay me and I'll show you how to get rich. And you think, wow, okay, well, let's have a look at your net worth. Yeah, I think by the fruit, you will know the root of the tree. Now, humans are actually very good. You can get tests. You can get tests that both show your biological age and your rate of aging. I take them myself every 6 months. I take a blood test that shows what the age of my blood is and what rate it's aging at. And these are getting increasingly accurate. My rate of aging is far slower than most people's. I rate so if 1 is 1 for 1 year, I age at 0.7 is the best I've got. It's quite consistent, so I'm aging slower than most people. But there are people who've done a lot better than me. There are people who've got it past 0.5. Some people are aging half the rate of other humans. How amazing. But we don't need any of that. Our eyes are remarkably good at testing age. If you look at someone, your estimation. So I think anyone who's saying, I know the secret rejuvenation, should look younger than their actual their chronological age, quite clearly. That's a very interesting thing. As a complete aside, it also turns out there's no such thing as cosmetic. People who actually have stuff done and make themselves look younger, test younger, it seems that we don't know which way around it is. It might be that the person who's willing to put on the face cream is also willing to jog. Or it might be to do with attitude. You've got this fighting spirit. But we have a Rosicrucian secret that goes through all three. Remember this. More important than any face cream, more important than jogging on the spot or sauna or anything like that. So sauna does exist in long livers. Tells you about sweating and how to get young. Anyway, happiness. Happiness, because happiness was in the Garden of Eden. And if you take some happiness and you lock it within yourself, you've got a little bit of Eden that'll keep you nice and young All three experts conclude how to get happiness, there's a bit of disagreement on. Yeah. Hayden does actually give some very distinct advice. He says you need, first of all, to make this stable happiness, is you're going to have to you've got to have your sense of purpose, what you're doing, and you've got to have an acceptance of joyous interaction with the world on a daily basis, which I think is like small things, isn't it? He's saying, yeah, the sunshine, yeah, Kitty, every day. Yes. Anyway, so happiness is the Rosicrucian secret of long life. And if the people are young, say they've got rejuvenation exercises, they better show it in their face, in their body, in their life. They better be younger. And that's when they say that's when you can claim you've got it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martin. We have another question in the chat from Ridgely, who asks, it seems to me that all three presenters died rather young. Could the rejuvenancy actually mean the confection of a subtle or energy body? I'm not sure about the word confection, what the meaning there is, but could it actually mean the confection of a subtle or energy body?
Yes, so there's an important thing. Yes, I was one of my friends. I don't know if it was him who did this. He said to me, "What awkward question should I ask?" And I said, "Well, you should ask. Why are we asking the secrets of mortality from those who've died?" Um, First of all, I mean, I think we might have different standards of lifespan now, and there are a lot of rumors, particularly with the Vaughns. Did they die? What did they mean by that? By death? Did they mean a rebirth? Did they actually die? Um, the the truth is of the matter is the techniques I'm talking about are clearly, overtly stated that they will physically make you younger. You'll lose the wrinkles, your grey hairs will go, you'll have a stubby step. They are absolutely, completely, and utterly talking about physical youth. But almost all of them have an idea that there'll be an enhancement to you as well, and that maybe you'll be able to go forth in your mind and go places, and that's a side effect. And again, I mean, one of the things I was saying is we have Rebecca appearing after her death and giving advice and quite detailed stuff. She actually, one of the visions, she tells him he's going to be coming to see her in a while. You've got limited time. And I don't quite know how it meant this to him, but she breaks a stick, and the length of the stick makes him think, I've got 7 years left. I don't know why, maybe it's a proportion thing. So I suppose we've kind of got her in that form you're talking about, coming back in a beautiful green dress, more green than you've ever seen before. You can't imagine that level of green. So yes, the immortality of the spirit, yes, definitely. I think all of them think they've got it already. I don't think they've got this. There's a Taoist idea you have to build this. I think they're pretty sure it's already there. You're mortal in the spirit. There is some contradictions though with scripture. I believe at one point in the Bible, a solicitor asks Jesus. He says, "Listen, what if a wife dies and you go, afterwards you remarry? What happens when you go to heaven when you die? Who are you with? What's going on?" And I think he says, "Listen, you don't understand what's going on here. In heaven, there isn't marriage in the same way." I seem to remember that. Anyone who's got a Bible nearby can check that out, whether Martin's memory is working well. That's definitely not what's going on here. They're going to carry on their work.
Quick question about rejuvenation with these three, following on from that. Do we get any reference from anyone else mentioning that they look younger or they've grown younger or anything?
The only, not with these three, you do definitely get in the Golden Rose Cross, and you definitely get with Cagliostro. and there were witnesses, and Bacon. No, you do. In his new Rosicrucian Physic, in the there's a section of where he's talking about the bits. You remember I mentioned the melting of the copper pots when the comet goes over and he's on there. He has seen in Egypt someone do it. He spent a lot of time there, and we're living a dream. We've got our grand Copt here, we've got the Egyptian here, and to him, Egyptians are good at getting to the base of things. So we've got all this flowery philosophy and everything, and they just cut to the chase. And this man, so he sees someone do it. He sees someone go away and come back young. Modernly, I have actually, not me, but in there's a big celebration, Hindu celebration, the Maha. I'll remember the name of it. Hasu might be able to come in. There's a big celebration everywhere near the Ganges. Someone told me that he's
Mahakumbh Mela.
Mahakumbha. So it means Mahakumbha is the great pot. Would it be the great pot Kumbha? Anyway, but this is meant to be where the Amorit came to Earth. I'm told that if you go there, you will see some old young men. You'll see some men that they've got there. They'll come along down from the mountains, and they may have grey hair and everything, but their faces are extremely young. And some of my friends have said to me they got quite close to some of these, and they think they go up to the mountain and do their Vipuri Karani Mudra for 6 months and come down young again. I don't, but that's just now I'm going into hearsay, ancient and modern. But John Hayden said he'd seen it happen. He'd seen someone go and hide in a cave, do the process, and come out in India. I'm sure that's where I read it. Yes, but that's a good question, Kitty. But there's also promises. So in long livers, if you haven't got that sort of title, do get a copy. Yeah.
Available
Yeah.
from Lewis
From Lewis Masonic. I've been obsessed. In the Atlantis books, the reason why people are holding up their copy, the reason why I've been fascinated by long livers is threefold. One, it gives the underlying mechanism for regeneration. Two, it's the earliest esoteric work on Freemasonry. I don't think there's anything before that was esoteric. And finally, it's got recipes in it which purport results. And in there they say, you will lose your grey hairs. This will happen. And it's got accounts of things. So I've been fascinated by this for ages. It's been one of those obsessions. But yes, so they are expecting it. Is that you get that in yoga texts, though? If you read the Amrit Siddha or the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it will say, do this and aging will stop, or do this and you'll get younger, or do this. So there are definitely recipes for that.
So do we have any other questions or observations anyone would like to share with Martin?
So, Martin, I was just going to say that there are researches being done now on certain parts of the world where in certain communities, there are what you call the long livers, where, you've got huge numbers who are living up to 110, 115. Maybe it's something that is a secret that they know about and we need to discover.
Yes, so now we are starting to be able to find some of the big drivers for long life, and some of them are probably connected to the Rosicrucian secret of happiness. We know that there's a massive increase in all-cause, a decrease in all-cause mortality if you've got lots of friends and you get on with people. And a lot of these places, these blue zones, they're very close, they're friendly kind of people. Saunas, there's a massive reduction in heart disease. Olive oil, whether resveratrol in red wine is a benefit. I mean, us Rosicrucians, we can live for a month on the smell of red wine. Never mind doing that. Absolutely. Yes, obviously, good sleep, and exercise. These are doing that. This is the exciting thing, though, is there are some. This is a Martin contemplation. Please forgive me for taking up your time with this extra, my thoughts. Do you know there are some animals that don't age? Actually, some animals just don't age. You can just certain turtles, their cell repair is so good they'll carry on until they get hit by something. There's some lobsters like that, maybe one of the sharks. Google it, you'll find them. Yes, their cell repair is so good. What I wonder is, are there some animals that don't age if you apply the right circumstances or diet or environment? So there's the bracket of us that of them that all age quickly and die quickly. There's those that are slower. There's those that don't age at all. Are the ones where you could put them in an ideal situation? You could take the mole rat and you could put him in mole rat paradise and give him special supplements. He lives forever. That's possible because there are some that don't age. Okay. Well, some people have got themselves to aging half the speed now. I've just got a feeling if we could get that a little bit lower, if we get to 0.3, the body will just repair itself. Is it possible there's a lifestyle that a human can have that means they don't age? Now, it might be quite extreme. It might be you have to get up, go into your oxygen chamber, take 100 pills, drink a thing, run for 5 miles, go sleep for an hour, go into a sauna. It might be quite extreme. But the fact that people have got to half speed now makes me wonder, are we going to cure it soon?
What about the Old Testament?
Well, that's the other thing that is so wonderful. I'm so glad Alex is here. I've got to make something very clear. I should have said this at the beginning. If you're Rosicrucian, you don't think this is something special. This is something in the Old Testament. This is something they used to do. We're all aging really fast now. Even the guys that died young in the Old Testament did so, 500. And there's a whole section in Long Livers telling you why that's definitely not months, that is years. Yeah. So now what's the explanation? Actually, explanation appears in Flood, and it appears in Pseudo-Eugenus Philalethes. It says that when we first left the Garden of Eden, we still had some of that holy trace upon us. We hadn't fully divinified, and it took a while for the earth, and that's what messes us up, is the earth, and for us to get so involved in things. Interesting enough, prayer and meditation, people who do that do test as younger than their age. There is a healing, but it's maybe to do with inner tranquility. So yes, so that's a very important point. Just imagine I said this at the beginning of the talk. The Rosicrucians saw this as part of the Christian birthright. You used to live to 300, 500. We're going to do it again through the correct lifestyle and way of doing things.
Forgive me for butting in, but I was a member for many, many years of the Rosicrucian Order AMORC here in the United States, and our lodge was quite active. And I've never met people that have lived forever, but I have noticed that many people who had been involved for many, many years had two things in common. The first thing was presence. There's something where when you're in the presence of somebody who's done a lot of work on this. And the one fellow I think of, I did was just like, imagine you're in a little dinghy in the middle of the night out on the ocean, and a giant tanker ship with no lights on comes sailing past you. You don't see it, but boy, do you know it was there. They were all like that. And the other thing was that even though everybody that I knew who's quite old did finally pass away, they all seemed, as you said, young. My closest friend, who's now is approaching his 80s and has had the dementia thing that seems to be becoming so much more common these days. He still looks like he's 65 or 67 years old. And there was another fellow who was a medical doctor here who lived, he passed away just recently in his 90s, but he was the tanker ship going by at night. He actually woke up one morning paralyzed and not able to get out of his bed. And they ran all kinds of tests and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. And finally, he said to his son, who was also a doctor, who, by the way, he outlived, he said, check my thyroid. And they said, no, it's not your thyroid. You have none of the symptoms. Check my thyroid. And they checked his thyroid, and it was the thyroid gland. For some reason, it degenerated and disappeared. And they put him on thyroid extract, and he popped right back. And in his 80s and 90s, he was towering and magnificently vital and completely mentally competent, and again looked very young. It was quite astounding to see this with all of these people.
Oh, wonderful. And it's lovely to hear that account. And this, you've raised, my dear fellow, a really very, very, very important thing. They've got three verys. Think how important what I'm about to say is. Yeah. Health span and lifespan. If I said to you, good news, you're living to 150, but the last 60 years of it, you're in an old people's home. You don't know who you are or what's going on, and they're saying to you, Mr. Faulks, do you want the apple for breakfast or not? That health span is very important. So strategies that increase health span, and please take this as no manner of disrespect, actually, because I see guys that I love these people, and they've got to the age where one thing breaks and another thing breaks, and all they're doing was if something break and they're going to this and this is going past. Right, how do you stop that? And why is that happening? Why it's happening? Because your epigenetic cell repair has got to the point where the signals are so bad that a lot of things aren't regulated. So we've got to help make sure there are some cells, senescent cells, the cells that have died, they're not doing what they're meant to do. We've got to keep everything in good repair as long as possible. So you're not just alive, you're like the tanker going past, you're doing something. There are some Rosicrucian approaches to this, but they're later on. There are certain Rosicrucian exercises where the claim is made, if you do this, you might get mind illnesses, but nothing serious will ever happen to you. And then meditative exercises to do with inner fire or to do with focus, that does exist. As far as health span, good news is a lot of things that are associated with longer lifespan, associated with longer health span. Here's the biggest things you can do. And some of them they're not very nice messages to hear. This body doesn't run very well when overfueled. Basically, your cell repair only really switches on fully if you're hungry. And then your autophagy will look for damaged things. It will find the precancerous cell, it will find the stuff like that. So you can't overfuel yourself. You're probably best to restrict your calories. I do four-day fasts a year. But also those cells, if they get food all the time, they get a bit complacent. Yeah. So they can't detect nutrients so well. So when you get older, you can have sugars and vitamins going past them and they don't notice them. They've had them so much. They've turned down the sensors. So you've got to do a few things to keep them alive, right? Now, I think a lot of people do this naturally. So if I leave Kitty alone, some days she'll dumbfound me. That's for going, right, now I don't want breakfast today or lunch or much dinner. I think, what? Why are we just randomly doing that? She's got her inner instinct tells her not to eat. Mine doesn't do that. I want to eat all the time. I'm thinking about food now. So I've got to plan out. I've got to say, we're not eating for these days. So that's one of the big things you can do for that. But it also needs a run, right? In long livers and in Freemasonry, you get this kind of thing that you've got to do some time of work. Well, they meant physical work in those days. You do need to run this system, preferably at full whack. And full whack for you might be walking down the street. Yeah, don't get too deprived of it. You've got to just run it at full whack once a day. And these things, incidentally, by the way, the mechanism behind exercise and fasting, some of it is quite similar. It's sort of the same thing. Anyway, sorry, I'm going on by now, but yes, keep your health span, like the lovely people in that Rosicrucian order who are there, so that when you're 90, you're still giving people trouble.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
While you were talking, I was just looking at this, the god kings of Sumeria, and the youngest one out of them died at the age of 10,800 years.
I got that down. Yes, we had a question from in the shop.
Yeah, one question. You listed some practical tips on how to boost longevity, and you're also a big advocate of the art of memory. Can memory have a role in aging?
Yes. So the question is, does memory have a role in anti-aging? Yeah, there's a very strange thing. It's an as above, so below thing. If people learn a foreign language, not only does it massively decrease the chances of memory-related problems, and I don't know whether that is because, if you're a bodybuilder and you get a age-related muscle wasting, people don't notice it, or if it does something else, but those people test younger. Their blood tests are younger. And your educational level is one of the biggest factors in your long-term epigenetic age. So it seems something, and I think, here's my theory world. I think there's some connection between your nerves and your mind. And I think that somehow running at a higher currency, so keep learning, keep memorizing. Some of the techniques we're talking about do involve memory, and a lot of the practices they had were memory related. So it's quite hard for us to visualize now. But remember, I said that I thought the Freemasons at the time, some of them thought that the ritual could lead to oneness. Well, that's because when they recited in their ritual, every symbol, every word, every speech would be taking you closer to the thing you're contemplating, which would be one of the pillars. So, and they did it in a question and answer format. So their way of meditating, and it's part of Christian wisdom now, a way of meditating on something is to memorize a lot about it, because when you're trying to record it, you can't think about anything else, and you're trying to recite things. So I think that was perhaps some of it there. Anyway, I sensed someone was about to say something.
The best art of memory about food is forget where you left the unhealthy food.
The art of forgetting.
Yes.
I have a question for you, Martin, please. In Chinese Qigong practice, which is its own method of inner alchemy, very often when people are talking about cultivation, self-cultivation, as opposed to just practicing exercises, but really doing the inner work, that it has nothing to do with imagination. True cultivation has nothing to do with imagination. And that can become a trap for people, that if you practice imagination, you get good at imagining. But that's very different from cultivation. What are your thoughts on that, please, if any?
So yes, let's Giordano Bruno talks about this. So one of the means whereby you could do things is you can be like a painter in your mind. The painting is a means to reach out. It's not the thing itself. And there is and how do you know? How do you know when you've managed to make the bridge from imagining something to a real connection with it? Okay. Well, a bit of fun here. The green will be more green than you could imagine. And that's the same with other things. So if you, so this is how you test the real from the apparent. Tell if something's in your imagination, tell if it's not. If you've had those moments when you just have a prediction of something and it turns out to be true, when that next happens, really look at how that happened, what that inkling felt like. What did it look like in your mind? And next time you have something similar, try imagining the opposite. If I think, oh, I think Hannah's about to phone. No, let's imagine, Barnabas is going to. If I can reproduce it the same, it's probably not the real thing. When I can't get that specific quality. So, likewise in your Taoist practice, I don't know if any of them start with imagination, but I suspect if they do, they don't end with it. There's a certain point where it's more real for the person than they can imagine, even if they're an imagination expert, and then they've got it. Then they're doing it, not imagining it. And I agree, it is a trap for people. Bruno mentions it as one of the possibilities. The problem, though, with reading Bruno is he was such a master of things, so in his mind, that some things will work for him in a way that, they'd work for us when we've achieved our adepthood. Yes, absolutely. I mean, some of the plans he has, he thinks, right, let's have a memory palace with 33 other memory palaces in them, right? And that's the first one. What? Yes, the first one. So we have 33 with 33 in each one of them, right? That'll be So and it was very real, very beautiful for him. So now I'm doing a Bruno, which involves just waffling around a point for ages and contemplating it. Yes, just being in your imagination is a trap. Your imagination is a bridge to your true intention or your true realization.
I've studied with a particular teacher who has a saying. He says, "This is a feeling art. You can't think your way into correct feeling, but you can feel your way into more correct thinking." I personally like that.
That's wonderful, Shane. There is a psychoanalytic and neuroscientific version of that says there is the unthought known, and that the unthought known is where we build a sense of self from. It doesn't come through logic, rational ideas. And so there's a body up and a top down. So we feel our way into emotions, which we translate into thoughts, and the thoughts we associate with language, and we can go up and down the same way, but in the middle, we don't know anything. It's unthought. Beautiful.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Is that Shiraz?
It is.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much for that.
William, yes, William, you were going to say something.
Because as a student of Martin's, put a lot of time into this imagination contraction method. As a pagan, I've done it specifically on gods. So to me, it's like, well, how do you know you're not just getting better at imagination? First of all, it does change your personality. If you meditate on a god, say if you meditate on Mercury for a couple of weeks, you just will be very mercurial and annoying and bouncing around and telling lots of jokes, this kind of thing. But you could still say, well, is that just, you've just hypnotized yourself? So the proof for me is sometimes they just genuinely show you things that you just don't know. I mean, obviously, you can only know that yourself. You write that in your diary. You're the one that, looked up this. So I can actually give you an example, actually. When I made contraction on the god Set, it showed me a three-legged toad. And I had no idea that the three-legged toad has the constellation of the plough on its back, and the Egyptian god Set is also the plough. So I didn't have this knowledge. So to me, that was the very first time. It was like contraction on a god. It's not just me, because I didn't know this. So no big deal, but just to throw that in there.
Yes, so I don't know if everyone here listening can hear what William said, but to summarize, I hope accurately, he was saying that one of the means to know is by more knowledge. So if you meditate on a particular subject, or in this case, a deity, you'll have visions or experiences which are connected, like in his case, the three-legged toad, or was it the Big Dipper? Was it the plough? Yes, the plough. Yes. I think if I achieved a kind of oneness in meditation with Set, I'd need a few days off work after that. I think, wow.
I did get into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask before we
or add?
Or add, indeed.
I have a question, Martin. You mentioned at some point in very erudite talk about the mouth becoming a stomach and the pores becoming a stomach. I wondered if you could perhaps say a little bit more about that.
Okay, so if just in case you heard that.
Brother Martin?
So, and I think he probably thinks the Rosicrucians would practice with the scent of wine as well, quite seriously. And there's certain sections where I wonder if he's saying you should apply it to your skin even. So I think he's saying that you can absorb. He's not convinced. You heard about his experience with the Arab man who had his head chopped in half and there was no brain in there, and he thought, hang on, this man's still going. I think he thinks that food does have stuff in that sustains your body, but I don't think he thinks it's necessary. I think he thinks there's this original moisture in it that you can absorb, and a lot of the Rosicrucian techniques involve a regeneration through the breath. And a bit later on, we see somewhere they're going to breathe. First of all, they're going to learn to breathe this, to find what he calls this sort of fat moisture or original moisture in the air. And then they're going to learn to do this through their pores, and then they're going to condense this. I can see Shane thinking, right, welcome to my world. In their
It looks like they've frozen again.
Okay.
Sorry, Martin, could you repeat what you just said? Because everything froze. Let's
Okay,
go back maybe a minute or so.
Yes,
that would be great.
I was saying there are Rosicrucian practices to do with this this energy. Let's call it pneuma, let's call it prana, let's call it chi, where they learn to breathe first. In first stage seems to be making your mouth into a stomach. So this is, they're going to breathe it in and learn to absorb it through their mouth, and then they're going to do it through their pores, and then they're going to put it in the different organs, and he charts it up, and this will make you younger. This organ thing, you're going to breathe life into it, just like God breathed life into you, just like Jesus breathed on his followers. Yes, so this is a part of their practice. Sometimes it's in the spine. Sometimes it's just you're going to load the whole of your body and learn to do that more. So this making a stomach of your mouth is, in this case, the stomach isn't a holder, it's the absorbing factor. It's like your stomach takes the benefit from the food. You're going to take the benefit from the food or the scent or the air from there. And this is a lot of the regeneration stuff as they sort of get there. But again, this is not one they like. They think this is probably in, strange places like India and Scotland. Yeah. Yeah, so absolutely. So yeah, so if you're in practice Franz Baden, or actually I think Crowley has a thing where you eat in silence for the great work. In Indian yoga, there is a absorbing the nutrients in silence when you eat. So there's an idea you can get more from the food as well, just like you can breathe in the energy from that, you can breathe it from the food as well. But again, all your food should be food of life. That's the important thing.
Does it cause? Could it be like a metaphor for sense data? So it's nutrients, not in terms of what we think of as food, like an apple, it's got vitamins and carbohydrates, but sense data that feeds us, that feeds our spirit, that feeds our soul, sunlight, the sound, the smells. Yeah. So sense data gives us something to digest and metabolize that we eat that fills our soul, that travels up, and we absorb that before we think about it, and then it comes up through our body into our brain. We emote about it, then we think about it, and then we create
from it.
create wonderful experiences from it.
So I think yes, so I don't think in this case, I think they are really talking about the sparkling in the air and the fatness in the air and absorbing it and so on. Because you even get things, you know, the not in any one I've mentioned, but other contemporary writers have Indians doing miracles with it and Rosicrucians doing miracles with it. But they do talk about what you're talking about, which is nutrients of the senses. And this is something people do not think about modernly. How often do you hear someone say, I don't have enough inspiration in my life? No wonder I'm ill. No wonder I'm not getting on. I've got no inspiring people. I never go to a museum. I don't read books and everything. I'm stuck in this room. You know, I can't tell you the last time I saw something that made me go, wow, or got me angry or did something. They are far more aware a little bit later on in the, do you think 1800s is a little bit later on from the 1600s? It's a little bit, maybe in the world stage it is. It seems like quite a long way. For the 1800s, they're getting it. They're getting that you need to have the right music. Apart from Paracelsus was fully aware the color of your room, the sound of the music, the people you're talking to, the paintings you have up. These were a huge part of who you are.
It was part of medicine.
It's part of his medicine, yeah. He used to say, look, you know, what are you doing? Where you spend it? So yeah.
Sleepians have theatres.
Yeah, so Kitty's mentioning, can everyone hear Kitty? She's mentioning that Asclepions had yes, well I'm going on a bit. But yeah. Yes. So this is ancient wisdom as well. But this is an important lesson for us now that Shiraz has raised this. More red than you've ever seen before. Here before me. Yeah. Ismail, you would like to say something?
Good afternoon, Brother Martin. So I just if you can propose some books, you can find about if you propose some books.
Oh, certainly.
Some books about the topic, we can find more information and.
So I'm going to tell you some books you could read, but I've got to make a caveat, and I need everyone to hear this. Most of the books I'm about to suggest to you will be the reading version of wading through actual treacle. No, seriously. The reason you know, people watching this have not heard these before is in order for me to talk to you about them, I have to read these massive texts which are full of whatever these people want to talk about. And they don't write like we do now. So they'll tell you about everything. So in order just to get the theory of the Garden of Eden, you'd have to read the whole history of existence from biblical speaking all the way to the end. It's in the middle because they couldn't ever think they shouldn't have the context. So, but I will tell you some of the reference books you should most certainly read if you're willing to do that. So first of all, you must have a copy of Long Livers, not just because it's real, but it's the only way I have to convince the publishing director that I've got the next one. Right, there was a response to Long Livers, it was more about happiness. Freemasonry was more about happiness than less sort of. So it was an esoteric view of Freemasonry as a happiness, and I've got to convince her it's commercial. Anyway, but if you want to read Flood, read his Mosaic philosophy, and you'll see a lot of things in there that you'll think, wow, this is quite Masonic, and it's really, really sort of a lovely thing. You could actually read his Mnemonic Methods, which is extracted from he wrote a giant microcosmic a macrocosmic encyclopedia. Have a bit of fun with that. If you want to read John Hayden, his new Rosicrucian physic has been extremely underestimated and never really explored. And John isn't trying to hide things. So he says things like, this is how we do it, and this is how we do that, in a way that no one else would at the time. And he said, but be aware that a lot of it is stolen from people. You know, so I mean, the whole two beginning sections are stolen from, the first bit is stolen from Vaughan. The second bit is stolen from Francis Bacon. It's a huge bit in there. Yes, so that's the important thing. Read that. That's good fun, and you'll hear some of the stories we've sort of had
Can
here.
send the title of the books.
So yes, so the first one is The Mosaical Philosophy, Robert Flood. The second one is The New System of Rosicrucian Physic by John Hayden. And the third one, but everyone here should immediately, but no one said a nice version of it. No, it's not, no, it's Lumen and Delumini, The Light of Lights by Eugenus Philalethes. This is when he meets Thalia. Talia is the spiritual name for Rebecca. This is when it's a beautiful image, and it's important for long livers because this is the Rosicrucians write him a letter telling him to find it in the mountain. He finds it and writes his account of it, and then his wife appears, and the next few books she's part of the team. Then, so part of his I think his spiritual enlightenment and marriage came together, as they do for many of us. So yes. So those are the three I would start with. But again, just be aware you're going to hear about everything. If you read John Hayden, you'll learn about, you know, potions that women can take to make sure that they certain parts of their body are enhanced in size. You'll hear about how to, you know, to extract chemicals. So it's going to be an interesting ride.
Martin, just a thought. This presentation you've done today, why don't you just create a pamphlet and then we can all buy it and then
Yes,
use that as a reference.
But if I was going to create a pamphlet from this, I have to do it against someone in this thing. I have to sort of say, you know, that to be we needed a Rosicrucian pamphlet war like we used to have. Yeah. So I have to, and so yes, Shane and I could do this. I could start writing. I could say
Stop both of
agreeing on everything.
Well, they often do. They often do. So the pamphlet would have to say why the English Rosicrucian method is suitable for anyone and the Chinese is not, type thing. And then he'd have to do a response. And yeah, incidentally, latter practitioners were aware of Taoism.
Well, I'll give you my deposit for one of those copies from now on. How's that?
Yes.
I'll send you an invoice, Hasu.
Yeah, advance payments.
Sorry. We have Vadim with your hand up. Vadim, please go ahead.
Yes. Today you have spoken a lot about physical rejuvenation, but could you say a few words about whether there is a connection here with such thing as the creation of body of light or body of glory, which the Martinists, for example, talk about? When when Adam fell, he lost his garments of light and became clothed in leather garments. What was this one of the goals of the ancient Rosicrucians?
Oh, this is a lovely question. This is a lovely question. Yes, so I'm aware, especially in Indian traditions and so on, there are ideas of different bodies you can do. You can have an alchemical body, you could have an adamantine body, you know, a body of light. We have this in Taoism as well. Yes, I think there's the rainbow body, sort of an achievement. What I've been intrigued by is in nothing written by any of these authors does this seem to appear. And if there's a regeneration which is non-physical, it is a moral regeneration or an awareness style regeneration. The actual change, the idea of an actual change to your spirit body doesn't seem to appear in anything they've written, unless you count it being joined in some way, between these two forces. There's this idea of being able to in alchemy, a lot of it is about separation and bringing it back, separation and bringing it back. And the idea that if you could separate it, you could sort of deify it. You take the good element and yes. So there's some practices, the closest I've seen, which are, these beyond the scope of what I was going to mention here. But this is where you come out of the body and you go to a high place and you are changed by that. And then you come back in. And that appears to have a kind of tempering process on you, that you are changed. And some seem to believe there's a physical change associated with it. But again, from the language, I'm not quite sure whether it is I'm visiting heaven, as in I step physically out of this body in a kind of astral form and go there, or whether it's I'm visiting heaven, I managed to become at one with that idea in a sense of Neoplatonic contemplation, or if that distinction is one that's just in my head, that they didn't think in those terms. But not in anything that I've read have I seen of a tempering of that and the creation of that, so on. Just be aware, I'm extremely my education with Martinism is just starting. I have tutors around me who are telling me, but my studies tend to be by what my next step is, and I become absolutely fascinated by things. And so I don't have a very broad education. It tends to be pursuing a goal or a mission to the point where I should be doing something sort of practical for my next day, but I'm on that research. So apologies if I do ever see anything. By the way, I have sent messages. I've sent messages to Martinists I know, saying, I know that part of your philosophy involves a regeneration of the spirit and the creation of an immortal sort of sense of a body. Is there anything in Martinism that says there's a reflection in the body? The answers I've got from two people who I respect the knowledge of, someone who'll probably watch this later on, was no. They can't. In Martinism, they are not aware of any rejuvenation effects of that, or any specific rejuvenation practices. If you know otherwise, do let me know. It'd be lovely to see.
Can I jump in? If we go from rejuvenation, earlier on you said, I can't remember, I think it was the first one, said it had to be in relationship. Rejuvenation had to be in relationship, the first character that you were talking about.
So this is the second. This is Thomas and Rebecca Vaughan, and they believe that true love is actually part of this process. So when you fall in love, you have found the opposite pole, and that all the things to do with that love are probably part of your teaching and your path.
So if we say that interaction was part of could be taken as proof of a rejuvenation, and you're looking for a physical aspect to that, and then if you took it through the rosarium, the woodcuts, you use some of them in the bath, the two people descending and then coming out and then back into the out and then back, and that temperance, and at the end coming out as a merged new form. That's rejuvenation. They've got studies where they have two people in fMRIs in opposite countries or separated by miles, who will tell the same narrative, who will create a story together, and they will watch the brain imaging, and they will get in sync. There'll be quantum entanglement across action, where two physical brains which will actually go in sync. Their patterns, their ways will go in sync across a different continent. So if it's about the joining, whether it's romantic love or just merging or creating something with another, that's a rejuvenation. Your brain patterns are changing. So that might be a physical
I like it. Yes, absolutely. One thing when you mentioned that made me think is that there's this concept of rejuvenescency. So your essence, which is connected with your mind, which maybe is your spiritual body as well, here. The idea that you could refill that or be more in touch with that is quite an interesting one. The essence can be made stronger and more powerful. Incidentally, in India, they've got some opposite associations. The male is the moon, and that's why the male reproductive liquid is lunar, and the fire of the body is female. Now we tend to have those sort of reversed association. We can see lunar as feminine, in this alchemy. Incidentally, I'm sure everyone knows here, but there are alchemical laboratories in India, and we even have depictions of yogis with their own laboratories. We've found quite early ones, and of course in China they had their alchemy going on. So they had all these areas. They had their same this sort of discipline on many different levels. Anyway, that was the longest no. Yeah.
That's wonderful, Martin. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to ask? Let's see. Now's your moment. Don't be shy. Okay, under the circumstances, Martin, then unless anybody at the Atlantis bookstore has anything they'd like to add or ask or contribute, I would
just saying thank you very much, Martin.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was about to say the same. Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Martin. That was a fascinating and very, very enlightening presentation. Thank you.
It's been superb to be here. Thank you.
So on behalf of the Metropolitan Study Group of the SRIA, thank you very much to Frater Martin Faulks and to everybody at the Atlantis bookstore in London. Lovely to see you all there. For everyone who's joined us on the call today, take good care. Love and peace to you all.
Thank you, Sheen.
Love and peace.
Thank you.